Let's get rocking!
It's time for the Metal Groove.
We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
A podcast dedicated to music.
Party on, dude!
Extreme close up! Whoa! Whoa!
Here's your metal host,
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
Tombstone Josh.
I'm your huckleberry.
Welcome to the show. Just wanted to pop in really quick and say thank you. I greatly appreciate anyone who takes a little bit of time out of their day to listen to this. It's greatly appreciated. And if you're brand new here, please hit that like and subscribe button. But real quick, we're going to jump to a clip of this man I'm talking to on today's program, absolutely crushing it on the drums. And then we have a fun conversation where we touch on just about everything, full of great info, full of great advice, man. So stick around, turn it up. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of the Metal Groove Podcast. Joining me today is a legend on the drums, man. Not only is he the touring drummer for Ted Nugent, but he is a phenomenal man on the skins with the sticks. Please welcome to the show, Jason Hartless. Dude, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hey, where in the country you calling from today?
So I'm actually home in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, sweet, man. Last time I went to Nashville was for a Steel Panther concert. It's kind of weird. I went to the country city to see a metal show, but Nashville's an awesome city, man. You love it? Is that where you're from?
No, I'm originally born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and lived there pretty much my whole life until till last fall. Made the move down here with my fiance, and it's been fun.
Life's been good. You got like the weather down here, right?
Oh yeah, well, I'm a Michigan boy through and through, though. I love my cold weather. So down here in Tennessee, we get the cold, we get the warm, so kind of a blend of everything.
Okay. So already I'm going to be off the rails a little bit because I hear Michigan, and I always want to know because it's that part of the country that loves pro sports and college sports. Where are you on that? Do you like sports at all?
I'm just a hockey guy. I've never watched a football game in my life, but in terms of sports, I'm big hockey guy.
That's Red Wings, right?
Oh yeah, Red Wings, and I'm also a big fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is funny because their rivalry is pretty strong. But yeah, growing up in hockey town, it's hockey was always the thing.
That's cool, man. I love that. Well, cool. You're a drummer. I'm a drummer. I love talking to drummers, my friend. And the way I found you was I think it was Instagram or maybe it was a Facebook reel or video, whatever they are. And I just saw you chopping away, man. And I think I commented, you got chops for days. And I reached out and you were nice enough to come on the show, man. So where was drums always what you wanted to do, or was it by happenstance?
Yeah, my dad was a professional drummer, and had some, pretty decent success in the Midwest with his bands back in the late 80s, early 90s. And, I was born in 94. So, pretty much when I was born, he decided he was going to retire from playing, and, the drums were always there. So I kind of always gravitated towards them. And, before I can even walk, I was crawling around with sticks and, banging on things. And then, by the time I can walk, I was sitting on his kit playing and jamming with some of his buddies. And, that was kind of the start of it all.
That's pretty sweet, man. So, would you say that he is a major influence on your playing? Like, do you try to model your game after him?
Well, the thing that, I loved about my parents is they kind of let me do my own thing in terms of, figuring out the drums myself. The biggest thing, my dad, him being a businessman, he's always harped on me to make sure I understood the business. And, that's why I've, kind of transitioned my career into, not just a player, but also, on the industry side of things, just because there's so much extra things that are involved in, this industry. And if you don't understand the business side of it, it could really kind of come bite you in the butt later on in other business deals.
Wow, that's crazy, man. That's good info too. But do you remember one of the first songs you learned, or was there a drummer you watched growing up? I mean, not to give it away as a spoiler, but I'm going to ask you if you have a top five drummers. But was there a guy that you remember watching and you were like, "Wow, that looks cool. I want to play rock music. I want to play country music." Do you remember that kind of moment for you and what song you wanted to learn first?
Well, I started so young that it's kind of hard to, really pinpoint a single song, but I know, growing up, my dad was his favorite band of all time was The Sweet.
Hmm.
And so Mick Tucker, the drummer of The Sweet, was a massive, massive influence on me. And Eric Singer with
Yeah.
Alice Cooper, more particular with Alice Cooper, his work was very influential, and Corky Lang from Mountain. So those three drummers were very, very, very heavily influenced on my playing early on. And I got to Corky became a mentor of mine when I was 7, and Eric Singer has been like an uncle to me since I was 10, and then now fast forward to 2024, the last 4 years I've been, working with the Sweets as their, one of their catalog labels for a lot of reissues. So it's kind of a massive full circle moment is that, where I started my entire musical experience is now turned into, long lasting friendships and, being able to kind of add to the legacy of some of these guys.
That's cool, man. So, that's great, man. I love to hear that. The way it is, it sounds like you have a great love and appreciation for music and drumming as a whole. That's really cool to hear, man. It's like a good love story. I always love that whenever music becomes a love story. But have you always been a rock guy, or what other genres do you like to play?
Honestly, I've kind of molded myself. I started as a rock guy, but I've molded myself into just kind of being the guy that just plays whatever.
Yeah.
I've been a studio musician, I've played on everything from death metal records to funk records to rock records to country records to
Uh-huh.
big band Christmas albums, so
Yeah.
I kind of like being in the situation where I just be the guy that just says yes, can you do this style? Absolutely. And it
Yeah.
keeps it fun too, you don't kind of um focus your playing just on one entity. You can kind of every single day is going to be something different.
Yeah, that's true, man. It keeps it fun, keeps it alive. Is there one particular, like off the top, somebody that maybe doesn't play drums might think that death metal and blast beats is hard to do, but is there a particular genre that caught you off guard with maybe something off time where you're like, okay, this is tricky?
Well, I mean, everything has its challenges. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, sometimes, you listen to some of the most simplistic things if it was on a piece of sheet music, but sometimes how to make it feel and sound the way you want to, it can be the most difficult thing in the world versus, math rock, which is pretty mechanical, and you
Yeah.
can easily write that stuff down on a piece of paper. So, I always gravitate more towards the groove style of playing because that at the end of the day is so much harder to achieve than um super simplistic mechanical type drumming, which is they all have their places, but guys like Jeff Porcaro and Vinny Colaiuta and Steve Gadd and all those classic 70s and 80s studio drummers are who I always gravitate towards as kind of like the leaders of what makes drumming great. And here we are, 40, 50 years later, and these guys are still the marquee drummers,
Mhm.
and that really plays a big part into it because if, a lot of times what they were doing was very simplistic. Vinny Colaiuta, a very different example because he always did, crazy stuff with Zappa. But point being is like, there's a reason why no one has ever been able to play Rosanna 100% correct, even though if you write it on a piece of paper, it looks pretty simple.
Mhm.
But, the feel and vibe that these guys had is just unmatched. And, that to me is more of a challenge and more of a desire in my creativity, than, a lot of the more complex math rock stuff. But like I said, both of it has their places in it, and I've done, pretty super complex stuff like that myself, and it's fun, but I like just sitting back and laying 2 and 4 down.
Nice, man. I hear that. I hear that. So, one more thing I want to ask you about being a studio or a session drummer. Um, if somebody wanted to do that, that's why you moved to Nashville, I'm assuming?
Yeah, yeah. I stayed pretty active in Detroit over all these years, working in various studios, and it was just kind of a change, time to change. Once Nugent, we last year was the last full tour. Now we just do one-off shows here and there. So it was kind of a perfect timing to kind of make the switch. And, it's in this current state of the industry, there's a lot of unknowns in terms of what's kind of happening just because of, the way everything's kind of going. So luckily, I've been able to stay, pretty busy in working, and very fortunate for that. But I'm the type of guy that I take one day at a time, because you never know what call you're going to get tomorrow.
That's cool, man. That's cool. That's a great way to look at it. So if somebody wanted to do that, what is it? Keep an open mind, grind every single day. Is that the kind of or the advice you would give them?
Well, the biggest thing is us musicians, we love our creativity.
Mhm.
We love to express, our own thing, our own style. I've learned over the years, a lot of times in studio sessions, when you're getting hired on a gig, even it's not even just studios, even if you're working for, an artist or something, at the end of the day, you're on their payroll, so you have to kind of sit back and do what they tell you. If they say, hey, I want you to play this different, you do that, because they're the ones that are paying you, unless you're the one that's cutting the check, you know, you're not really going to have the luxury to do it. Now, there's a lot of artists that give their musicians the freedom, Ted being one of them, is always kind of giving me the freedom to interpret the tunes, like I want. And I've honestly, most of the artists I've worked with been great like that, because they know that, they're hiring a certain player for their creativity. They're hiring a certain player for the thing. And if they hire someone, they know that they're also going to get the base of the song. They know they're going to get the every element that's important of a certain song. But adding your flair here and there is great. But being on the studio game, obviously in the age of today, where more and more program stuff is happening, especially when it comes to drums, the opportunities for studio musicians are kind of getting smaller and smaller versus back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where studio guys and gals were cutting 2, 3 records, a week, and, doing sessions that are, 5, 6 songs in the morning, and then go to another studio and cut another 5, 6 songs, so
Mhm.
it was a very different time, where nowadays everybody's got their home studio, everybody's got a buddy that plays. So it's a lot more of a cutthroat niche to get into. But when you find the right producer, you find the right artist, and you're golden.
No kid, man. I could imagine with technology too, people could just, rip any beat they want on a keyboard or a computer screen and do it that way too, man. I'm sure it's a tough gig, man. But I appreciate
Exactly.
all the
Well,
info
that's
you've
why.
given me. That's a lot, man. I love when my show can be fun but educational as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. Is that's why, sadly, we're in the state now. We're seeing more and more iconic recording studios get torn down, and the record plant shut down last month. Omni here in Nashville shut down. And got torn down last month as well. And you got a lot of them are just iconic, that have recorded so many amazing records that we all hear every single day 90 times. But there's nothing that'll ever compete with a, large drum room, or
Mm.
a large, vintage Neve console or an API console. And, I have, a home studio at my house, and I love it. It's great for quick sessions, but at the end of the day, I want to be in a studio with, that big Neve desk, in that big drum room, because nothing's going to ever kind of replace that just organic sound that, you can get that way.
That's cool, man. Wow. Wow. Great info. Let's talk a little bit about setup, if that's okay with you. Maybe starting with shells. Whenever I saw the videos of you, and then once I started diving into your videos, I noticed you got a pretty big kit, man. What are you playing?
Well, I don't really play a huge kit. I've always tried to keep a very small kit.
Mhm.
The traditional jazz setup, where, kick drum, rack, 2 floors, sometimes even only 1 floor. I've played Pearl literally my entire life. My dad, had Pearl drums in the house, and, I was very fortunate to be signed as an artist with Pearl by the time I was 10. So I'm going on my
Wow.
20th year as a Pearl artist. And I have what you call a drum hoarding problem. So I have a I have a lot of snare drums and a lot of drum sets, and that I've collected over the years. A lot of them vintage Pearl. But it's just the keeping. I've always tried to keep a very small, old school jazz setup. Not I always, number one, I'm a big jazz guy, so I love the look of it, number one. But also number two, it kind of encompasses everything that I like to accomplish when, playing a gig. occasionally I'll add another rack tom, if the music calls for it, but I try to stick within my lane of like, okay, if I'm playing this type of music, I only really need this,
Mm.
so there's no that like I'm never been a fan of like I'm gonna have a bunch of rototoms and 90 toms and all this stuff.
Yeah.
There's very few drummers, very, very few drummers out there that appropriately use every single piece amazingly. Neil Peart, of course, was one of them, but also Todd Zuckerman from Styx is a massive kit, and Todd
No, he's so
he
good.
he uses every single bit of that kit
Mhm.
perfectly.
Yeah. A lot of the time,
For
like Alex Van Halen's is big and pretty and looks like a lot going on, and he uses all of them too. So maybe is it cymbals? Do you have a lot of cymbals? Because I feel like maybe it was the view of the video. It just looked like it was massive.
No, I mean I usually just do two crashes, a ride, maybe a China, and a
Okay.
hi-hat.
Wow.
I try to keep it very, stripped down.
Mhm.
It depends on the gig though too. I've done sessions where I've added a splash or, something like that because the music called for it,
That's
but
cool.
um again, keeping that just classic old school vibe is what I've always kind of, gone towards.
Gotcha. Do you have a cymbal brand you prefer?
Yeah, I've played Sabian
Nice.
pretty much my whole career. There was a time in my teens that I was with a Canadian company called Dream, and they were absolutely amazing to me. But Sabian was always my home. I started with Sabian, and I went back to Sabian about 10 years ago, and it's just they're the best cymbals ever. Period.
Gotcha, man. I love that answer. It's not it's a great brand. It's just not the one I hear very often. So I love to hear that answer. And the last one I'll ask you about setup is a sticks. Do you have a preferred stick size? Do you like vinyl tips? Do you like a certain brand?
Yeah, so I've played Vader pretty much my whole life as well, and I actually got endorsed by Vader the exact same week as I got my Pearl endorsement. So I'm going on 20 years with Vader as well, and most of my career I've used Vader 5As.
Mm,
Um, and once I actually joined Nugent, oddly enough. I kind of stepped it up a little bit, and I've been pretty consistently using the Josh Freeze H220s, which are basically the same thing as a 5A, but just a teeny bit beefier, basically between a 5A and a 5B.
mhm.
Um, and then when I toured with Pop Evil, I used 5Bs. So I kind of
Okay.
swap around things depending on, the gig. And, I know I've got sets of, sugar maple 5As if I'm playing a jazz gig. So I know I need a lighter stick and,
Mhm.
because I'm not going to use a 5B on a jazz gig. So
Yeah.
kind of have the right arsenal for the gig is always been my kind of mindset is, you can have your favorite brands and keep with those brands, and then within those brands, you kind of build your kind of go-tos for certain genres.
Wow, man. And then pedal setup. Are you playing double bass or single? What are you doing?
Well, typically I do a double bass pedal. I've used the Pearl Eliminators for 90 years,
You.
and those are always amazing. I typically go for a single pedal though. But usually when I'm on tour, I'll always have a double pedal just because it's nice. Even if I'm not doing any double bass work, it's still nice to kind of have it for accent purposes. Like Ted, there are songs where we do double bass, so I kind of need it. But sometimes, like when I toured with Eric Martin, I only needed a single pedal, so again, it goes to back to what I was saying is it's all depend on the gig and the situation.
That's cool, man. Very professional, man. I love to hear that. Um, So I brought up earlier about you having phenomenal chops and just watching you play and enjoying it and admiring it. Another thing I wanted to ask you, maybe as far as something that somebody can learn from this episode, um, how did you build up your stamina? Like, what is your routine for warm up or just practice? How did you build that up? And what is
Well,
your go-to?
the biggest thing, it's really hard to, especially for a tour. It's kind of hard to really build up to that intensity, especially when you're playing with an artist that, you're doing an hour and a half, hour 45 gig, and it's straight through. There's no ballads.
Mhm.
So it's when you have that put out that much intensities, it can be difficult to kind of train up to that. You always, of course, practice and play and keep your chops up that way. But, before gigs, that's usually my big thing. I try to, at least for 10, 15 minutes, even if I'm not actually playing something, I still got my sticks in my hand, kind of stretching them, kind of, getting the joints lubricated, and but if I do have a pad, I'll sit there and I'll play, combination of single, double, triple paradiddles.
Mhm.
Um, Even a paradiddle diddle, just kind of all interleaned together, because it's the perfect combination of everything, in my opinion, because you're getting accents through it, you're getting doubles through it, you're getting singles through it, and it kind of has also that polyrhythmic thing if you play them all back to back to back. So it's kind of like the perfect storm of a warm up for me. Um, but again, at the end of the day, it's all about just making sure your joints are lubricated and ready to go, because you can injure yourself extremely easy if you don't warm up. And I've definitely been a culprit of this. I've definitely been in situations where maybe I didn't have time to warm up, or
Mm.
I forgot to warm up, and I get on stage and I'm like, oh crap, you know my joints are a little stiff tonight,
Yeah.
but as long as it doesn't become a habit, that's the key thing, because you never want it to become where you don't warm up at all, and then you get past a certain point and you're just kind of shot.
Yeah. That's crazy. Cool, man. Good info, good advice right there. All right, let's talk a little bit about Ted Nugent. I mean, he's kind of the reason why I stumbled upon you. It was one of the videos you were drumming on his tour. He's known as the Motor City Madman. Is there a favorite Ted Nugent song you like to play?
Well, it's with 10 years playing with Ted, it's been super super fun.
Mhm.
His music, especially for drums, has a lot of ability, kind of open space for me to interpret it, kind of very based off of the original drum parts that Cliff Davies did, but also, we've been a three-piece the whole time. So we have that kind of old school power trio kind of thing. So it kind of allows for a lot more space to be filled in. Um, playing the iconic song like Stranglehold, even though that the drum beat is the same thing for 8 minutes, it's just, playing an iconic song like that is just
Yeah.
always a highlight. And I have fun playing all the songs, and that's that's
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. There's never really a song that I look at the set list and I'm like, oh man, I gotta play this one again. And we keep the set list pretty fresh,
Oh, that's good.
at least when we were on the tour, on tour, at each tour we'd probably add a couple different songs that were deep cuts or whatever. Nowadays, because we're just doing one-offs, we're gonna probably keep to a very similar set list, just because the fans want to hear, the hits, and that's it. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint one, but for sake of just the iconic factor of it, playing Stranglehold's always amazing.
I got you, man. I completely understand that. And for somebody who doesn't know him personally from the outside, he's a very polarizing character. Um, so has there ever been any crazy moments that you can remember looking back on the past 10 years, or maybe something that stands out like, wow, that was a little crazy, or that was a little weird, or how is he as a person?
Well, I can't say enough great things about the man. He is different than what, the media portrays him as. He
Mhm.
is one of the most kindest people ever. He treats my family like family, and, the whole Nugent family has just embraced me over these years, and has entrusted me in archiving all of his vault material, which we have a very big project that we've been working on for the last probably 2 years, that we're going to be probably announcing here within the next couple months. That's going to pretty much revolutionize how, some of these legacy artists kind of um, get their unreleased material out to the consumer. So
Mhm.
I've been archiving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of unreleased audio and video and all this stuff. But it's been an amazing 10 years. He's helped my career tremendously, and I can't say enough great things. And he's just a extremely kind gentleman.
That's awesome. Does he ever bring any food on tour that he's hunted with? I'm sure that man can.
Oh,
I'm sure he can crush
oh,
it.
absolutely, absolutely. Him and I went. He's taken me deer hunting a few times, and
Mhm.
we always got venison. Anytime I go out to the ranch, we always fueled up, and it's amazing food always.
That's great, man. So I greatly appreciate you joining me. I have a couple random ones here to wrap things up. But this has been a blast, man. I love all the info you've given me has been great, man. So if you're ready for this random run of questions, I'll throw them your way.
Yeah, of course.
So I can tell you have a love and a passion for music, and you probably are going to answer these differently than some of my past guests have, because you kind of have been on the opposite side of it. But what band have you seen live that blew you away that maybe you weren't expecting?
Well, it's really hard, especially nowadays, being a musician and being, I'm a very analytical type minded person. So it's
Mhm.
sometimes can be hard, for me to go watch a band because I'm kind of just always thinking about the technical aspects and thinking about, not just actually sitting and watching the concert,
Mhm.
but I've seen Toto is one of my favorite bands of all time, and I've seen them a few times and they're always great. I guess a better thing would be if there was one concert that kind of changed my life in terms of like I looked at him, it's like that's what I really want to do was 2001. I went to go see Alice Cooper on the Dragontown tour, and seeing Eric Singer and just watching the show, I was like, man, this is great, that's what I want to do. And oddly enough, the bass player on that tour ended up being my bass player with Ted Nugent for many, many years.
Nice.
So, it's a crazy full circle moment. And, that was kind of the one concert that if I pinpoint to, kind of a changing moment. But, I always love going to watch bands, but,
Mhm.
nowadays it's kind of, it kind of becomes a little more difficult because I think about the production aspect of it, or I'm out, I'm going to see, friends out playing with whomever, or something like that.
There's a great rock band. Maybe you've heard of them. There's a great rock band in Nashville called True Villains. They're so good, man. They put on a great show. So if you ever see them playing, man, they're really good. What are some current bands that you've seen? Maybe they've gone on tour with you guys, or maybe you've just stumbled upon them that have kind of like grabbed your ear.
Honestly, I'm an old soul. I'm a product
Mhm.
of old school music. I listened from 1940s big band usually until about 1990s. So I'm such enthralled in that, classic music from pop to rock to funk to all that stuff. But I still do love a lot of modern stuff. You know, talking super super modern, my fiance's got me into Chapel Roan, who's a pop artist that she's blowing up right now, and her very very awesome music because it's a very reminiscent of 1980s, kind of Madonna, if it
Wow.
was a little bit different. It's great stuff, and she's a phenomenal artist.
Awesome, man. Good call on that one. In between shows, or maybe in between tours, or maybe when you're at home, do you like to read? Do you like to watch something? If so, what are you watching?
Yeah, I love when I'm off the road. I love just sitting watching TV and
Mhm.
watching. We always have binge The Office on. I think we've watched it 9,000 times, but
Yeah.
it never gets old. But when I'm off the road, I'm always trying to do something different, working on different projects. Whether it be with my record label or my entertainment company that I own, or something like that. So I'm always kind of doing multiple different things, and try to stay as busy as possible.
I got you. That's perfect, man. So if you weren't a musician, what do you think you would be doing? Like, what is that hobby that you could also see being like a career for you?
Well, I got my degree at Berkeley from music business, and I've always
Mhm.
been enthralled in the business side of the industry, and that's why I've kind of dipped my hand into a lot of different aspects of it because it's just I love being involved in music. It's been my entire life. So the second I decide to hang up the drumsticks, I'm going to be moving my career into the business aspect of it, just because I don't think I have a life outside of being in the music industry.
I hear that, man. I hear that. It's cool. It does definitely sounds like a lifelong love project that you have there. Um, One more that I specifically love to ask drummers, that non-drummers don't understand why I love to ask this question. But Eric Singer, who has come up a couple times from you, I don't understand how he does it, but he can drum in these massive platform boots. What is your go-to footwear for drumming?
Well, actually, Eric doesn't play in those boots. They switch him out. They switch him out, before he goes out in front. But he wears normal shoes.
That's awesome.
But
That's good to know.
I always am a Converse guy. I've worn Converse forever. It's probably horrible for my back, but I've got so used to it. Like I hate playing in anything but Converse.
Mhm.
There's been times where I've gone to a session or I've gone, to a local gig with some buddies or whatever, and I look down and I've got my sneakers on, and I'm like, my gym shoes or whatever. I'm like, man, this is gonna suck because it's not gonna feel the same.
Yeah, it's hard to explain to somebody else as well. Like it just doesn't feel the same when you train. Like I've gone from work, which I do manual. Like I'm a service tech, so I wear steel toe boots. And sometimes I've gone from work to play a show and forgot to bring shoes. I'm like, oh, I got to drum in steel toes now. This sucks. And they're like, it's just shoes. What's the difference? But it does make a difference.
100%.
Yeah. And then I kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Could you rattle off a top 5 drummers?
That's always I've been asked that literally my whole life, and it's always a hard one because I've always kind of taken the mentality of like you should never have one favorite drummer. You should never even have a top 5 or a top 10. It should just kind of be, a million favorite drummers because you're going to take influences from every single one of them.
Yeah.
But if I was to pinpoint just,
All right, let's go this way. Can we go Mount Rushmore? Would that be better?
Yeah. I would not even Mount Rushmore. I was going to say, if I was to pinpoint what top 5 drummers I can pinpoint most I was influenced by.
Mhm.
I'd mentioned 3 earlier: Eric Singer, Corky Lang, Mick Tucker from the Suite, but also Jeff Vaccaro, and probably Todd Zuckerman. So those five guys, if I was to kind of pinpoint, okay, where do I get most of my kind of influence from, I would say those 5 guys.
Cool, man. Great list. Phenomenal list. And we've learned a lot on this episode, man. It's been an absolute blast talking to you. I think one of my favorite things I just learned was Eric Singer doesn't have to drum in those boots. That's kind of like a relief to me. But it's been a blast hanging out with you, man. I enjoy it. I love talking drums. Are there any other projects you're a part of?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, we're working on this big top secret project for Nugent that's kind of going to revolutionize how these legacy artists are kind of reaching their fans, especially as more and more are starting to retire. We're going to find more and more this type of thing come up, and that's kind of my big thing right now. On top of we got a show in a couple weeks here at Ocean City Bike Week, and that'll be our last show of this year as of right now. And just staying as busy as much as possible and doing all the things.
That's awesome, man. If you're ever in Charleston, South Carolina, or if I notice you're in Charleston, South Carolina, I'll reach out to you, man. I owe you dinner or something. This has been a great conversation. I look forward to seeing whatever you guys have going on. And I can't do nothing but wish you the best of health and luck and everything out there, man, because you're a great dude.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, man, have a good night, man. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, you too.
All right, see ya.
Hey, that's the show for this week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And join us here at the Thrill Me Podcast Network, where you can check out phenomenal shows like Haunter's Podcast, The Review of Rob Show, The Mr. Wonderful Show, and Core Memory Unlocked. We greatly appreciate you. And until next time, stay metal.